March 19, 2003. For a brief moment, the sky above Baghdad is still. In the darkness before dawn, families sleep on rooftops to escape the early warmth of spring. The Tigris moves quietly beneath its bridges. Minarets stand poised for the first call to prayer. In a city older than most nations, the rhythms of ordinary life continue, steady and familiar. Then, without warning, the horizon erupts. Missiles streak across the night. Government buildings shudder under impact. The silence is replaced by a rolling thunder that seems to swallow the city whole. A war long discussed in distant capitals announces itself in fire and sound. Far away, in offices lit by fluorescent light, officials follow events on glowing maps. Prepared statements wait to be delivered. And in homes across Iraq, people awaken to a reality that has suddenly, irrevocably changed. The Iraq War did not truly begin that morning. Its origins lay years earlier, shaped by fear, memory, and unfinished conflict. Iraq had already endured decades of turmoil. A devastating war with Iran in the 1980s, the invasion of Kuwait in 1990, and the US-led coalition response that followed. The years of sanctions that came after placed immense strain on the country's economy and infrastructure, leaving ordinary Iraqis to navigate shortages and uncertainty. Under Saddam Hussein, the state projected power through spectacle and control. His image was everywhere, on billboards, in classrooms, along highways. Public dissent was rare, spoken only in trusted company. The security services listened carefully, and most people understood the limits of what could be said aloud. Yet daily life persisted. In Baghdad's book markets, conversations about literature continued. Students in Mosul debated ideas in cautious tones. In Basra, fishermen worked waters shaped by both commerce and conflict. Weddings were celebrated, tea was shared, and families adapted to the constraints around them. Sanctions had weakened hospitals and strained essential services. Electricity was unreliable. Medicines were scarce. Still, communities found ways to cope. Generators rattled in alleyways. Informal markets filled gaps, and routines endured. Then came September 11, 2001. The attacks in the United States reshaped global politics almost overnight. In Washington, grief hardened into resolve. President George W. Bush declared a war on terror, first targeting Afghanistan. Soon, attention turned toward Iraq. American and British leaders argued that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction and posed a growing threat. Intelligence assessments were presented with confidence, though debate persisted behind the scenes. At the United Nations, inspectors searched Iraqi facilities, reporting mixed cooperation but no confirmed stockpiles. Allies disagreed sharply over what should come next. Around the world, millions of people protested a war that had not yet begun. Despite the divisions, momentum carried forward. The military campaign was given a name: shock and awe. The strategy called for overwhelming force designed to break resistance quickly. Coalition troops advanced from Kuwait. American units pushed toward Baghdad, while British forces moved into Basra. Iraqi defenses, weakened by years of isolation and poor supply, often collapsed faster than expected. On April 9, 2003, in Baghdad's Firdos Square, a statue of Saddam Hussein was pulled down before television cameras. For some, the moment symbolized liberation. For others, it was met with uncertainty and silence. The regime had fallen. The harder phase was only beginning in the weeks that followed. The structures of the Iraqi state unraveled. Ministries were abandoned. Police forces vanished from the streets. Prisons were opened. Looting spread across government buildings, museums, and hospitals. The National Museum, home to artifacts from some of humanity's earliest civilizations, suffered devastating losses. Authority had disappeared, but nothing had yet replaced it. In May 2003, the Coalition Provisional Authority issued sweeping changes. The Iraqi military was dissolved, leaving hundreds of thousands of soldiers without roles or income. At the same time, members of the Ba'ath Party were barred from public employment, removing much of the existing administrative class. The intention was to dismantle dictatorship. The result was a sudden vacuum. Across the country, local groups stepped in to provide security or assert influence. Religious leaders gained prominence. Long-suppressed identities, sectarian, ethnic, tribal, re-emerged as organizing forces in a landscape without clear authority. By late 2003, attacks against coalition forces began to multiply. Roadside bombs and ambushes replaced conventional battles. The insurgency was not a single organization but a patchwork of former regime elements, nationalist fighters, and extremist groups. Cities like Fallujah became symbols of the conflict's new character. Fighting there in 2004 was intense and destructive, marking a shift from invasion to prolonged urban warfare. 4 American and British troops, Mission changed from a swift campaign to a complex and often ambiguous struggle. Danger could emerge anywhere. Progress was difficult to measure. Letters home described uncertainty as much as combat. For Iraqi civilians, daily life became a series of calculations: when to travel, which neighborhoods felt safe, whether schools would remain open, whether electricity would last through the heat of summer. In 2004, images of detainee abuse at Abu Ghraib prison circulated worldwide, sparking outrage and raising profound questions about the conduct of the war. Trust eroded further. Both within Iraq and internationally, efforts to build a new political system moved forward nonetheless. An interim government was established. Elections were held in January 2005, with many Iraqis risking danger to votes. Purple ink-stained fingers became a symbol of participation and hope, though turnout varied sharply across communities, deepening existing divides. In 2006, the bombing of the Al-Askari shrine in Samarra triggered a surge of sectarian violence. Retaliatory attacks spread. Neighborhoods became segregated. Though rarely described formally as such, Iraq had entered a period resembling civil war. Casualties mounted. Markets, mosques, and public spaces were repeatedly struck. The human toll rose into the tens of thousands, leaving scars that extended far beyond statistics. Back in the United States and Britain, public support declined as questions intensified. The promised weapons of mass destruction had not been found. The duration and cost of the war grew steadily. In 2007, the United States implemented a new strategy known as the Surge, sending additional troops, while working closely with Sunni, tribal leaders who opposed extremist groups. This partnership helped reduce violence in several regions. Security improved in parts of the country. Some businesses reopened. Yet deep political and social fractures remained unresolved. Iraq's new order shifted power balances. Shia political parties dominated central government. Kurdish leaders strengthened autonomy in the north. Many Sunni Arabs felt excluded from influence they had once held. Oil production gradually recovered, bringing revenue but also challenges of corruption and uneven development. Reconstruction advanced slowly. Expectations of rapid transformation gave way to a far more complicated reality. The war's effects reached well beyond Iraq. Regional power dynamics shifted, alliances were strained, and debates intensified about intervention and the limits of military power. In 2011, nearly 8 years after the invasion, the last American combat troops withdrew. The ceremony was quiet, almost understated. Officially, the war had ended. History, however, did not stop. In the years that followed, instability in Iraq and the wider region created space for new conflicts. Groups that had emerged during the insurgency evolved and reorganized, drawing the region into yet another cycle of violence. To understand the Iraq War is to see it not as a single event, but as a chain of transformations. It reshaped Iraq from a centralized dictatorship into a fragile democracy grappling with division and rebuilding. It altered Western foreign policy and changed how governments spoke about security, counterterrorism, and nation building. And it altered countless individual lives. A generation of Iraqis grew up surrounded by checkpoints and reconstruction. Many left, forming a global diaspora. Others remained, rebuilding communities amid uncertainty. Soldiers and aid workers carried memories of places they had served long after returning home. Wars are often described through strategy and speeches, yet their true impact is found in smaller spaces, homes, classrooms, and family tables where absence is felt most deeply. The Iraq War forced difficult questions about power, responsibility, and consequence. There are no simple answers. Today, Baghdad shows signs of renewal. Cafes along the Tigris are busy again. Public debate is more open than it once was. New buildings rise beside older scars. Yet memory lingers beneath the surface. Trust remains delicate. The political system still wrestles with competing visions of Iraq's future. Looking back at that March night in 2003, it may seem as though events unfolded inevitably. But history is never inevitable. It is the result of choices made in conference rooms, debated, supported, opposed, and ultimately lived by ordinary people. The Iraq War became a defining chapter of the early 21st century, shaped by ambition, anxiety, and the belief that overwhelming force could reshape societies. It also revealed how deeply societies shape themselves, often in ways outsiders cannot predict. The Tigris still flows through Baghdad, as it has for millennia. It has witnessed empires, revolutions, and recoveries. On quiet nights, when the city settles, the river moves past rebuilt bridges and healing neighborhoods. The sky no longer burns. But for those who lived through that time, the memory remains, an enduring reminder of how profoundly a single decision can alter the course of nations and of lives.